Florida, it's out with a new school curriculum, for African-American history. And here are some of the new standards. First, students will be taught, quote, how slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Second, they will be taught about notable massacres against African Americans, but it will note that some black people played a part in that violence. Finally, students will be expected to identify famous African Americans like Rosa Parks, you see here, but won't be expected to know why these people are important or about their histories. So the new curriculum was drafted to meet the state's new Stop Woke Act. It was signed into law by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, and it's all part of his anti-woke agenda. Now, as you can imagine, the new curriculum is getting blasted, including by our very own Vice President Kamala Harris. Watch.
Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
What do you think of these new rules that the Florida of Education Association says are disservice to Florida students and are a big step backward for a state that has required teaching African American history since 1994?
Well, first of all, this is Florida, which means that the students and the children in Florida will be the ones who are severely impacted by the idea that they aren't up to speed with the rest of their peers in terms of competition for education, jobs, society. If you just break down even some of the points on this in terms of formerly enslaved people benefiting, this is the same school of thought that we fight when we hear about anti-Roe v. Wade and the idea of it not being able to have an abortion even based on your father potentially sexually assaulting you and you getting pregnant that way, or in other sexual assault situations. It's the idea that the baby and the pregnancy is more important than the person. There's a benefit to this very egregious act. I don't know how anyone rides that line, but apparently this is a line that a lot of people want to ride right now. The second one taught about massacres, but it'll be noted that some black people played part in that violence. What did you say about that, Al?
You know, they're
bad people.
But you tell me, I don't know.
On both sides?
Oh, it's the bad people on both sides. And Erica, it's just a way, it's like saying if somebody, and I don't want to even say this to you because I don't want to trigger you, but like, Jeff, if somebody broke into your home and you fought back in the middle of the night with a golf club saying that there was violence on both sides, which technically is true if we don't say who invaded whose home. As somebody that was a teacher in Florida for 5 years, this is all on paper and online to people. We talk about that all the time, Jeff. The stuff people like to argue about online and write in all caps about. I was in those classrooms for 5 years, and I know teachers that taught history, and if I had to teach something like this, I would leave the school. I would leave the teaching profession. Can you imagine? Do you know what like a 12-year-old looks like when they're looking to you to teach them something that they're going to take with them for the rest of your life, and you have to tell them that, hey, slaves got a lot out of this. They learned how to cook and clean. You know, and again, you know, going back to the violence on both sides, when you take something and muddle that down, what you want to do is just create enough of an argument so that your side feels justified in the way that they feel. So you don't say that the Civil War was about slavery, you say it was over states' rights. And the idea of a state having autonomy doesn't necessarily sound like a bad thing. And when you have things that don't necessarily sound like a bad thing because you're not talking about the real thing, you allow room for arguments and you allow room for bigotry and room for prejudice and room for acts of violence, both physical and financial, to be put upon people. So the fact that we're having this conversation in 2023 about like not being able to say what Rosa Parks did, but just that she was a person.
Like a TikToker.
Or like a noun.
Yeah.
Rosa Parks is a person, place, tree, circle which one? Like, Jeff.
No, listen, I can't make sense of it. I can't.
It's insane.
It is insane. And I feel like we're missing something, or the message isn't being relayed in a way that we could understand it, right? The Don't Say Gay bill, I'm not pushing back against it, but it wasn't the Don't Say Gay bill. It was don't teach kids sexuality up until 3rd grade. I have a 1st grader. I think that's I think that's okay, right? But if I challenge that in any sort of way, I'm homophobic, I'm transphobic, I get hit with the label. We can't have conversations anymore because if you're not with me, I'm going to throw a label on you and try to affect you. You're a Trumper, you're this, that, and affect your future. We need to get away from that. I cannot believe that if these are the facts stated correctly and relayed to us, that you have to know who Rosa Parks is, but you're not allowed to teach who
Correct.
Rosa Parks is.
Correct.
Let me finish my thought here. How is that fair to the students, first of all? How are you going to get that answer right if you're not allowed to teach who she is? That seems insane to me. We have to be missing something here.
Jeff,
I understand people are against DeSantis, against Florida, but something in translation has to be lost here, because if you're a teacher in Florida or an averagely sane person, which I like to think I am, I got a college education. If I was a teacher there and they'd said, you can't talk about who Rosa Parks is, but they have to know who Rosa Parks is, I would go to my superior and say, are you out? What is happening here? I don't understand what you're saying. You want me to teach this but not teach this?
Right.
This is insane. So I hope we're missing something. Maybe we're not.
I mean, we saw this in real time last week in Oklahoma. There are some of these survivors. As a matter of fact, since we're talking about the Tulsa massacre, somebody that I know, who we all know personally, very successful financially person, successful human being, called me one day after an HBO series called The Watchmen was on. It's a, like the X-Men. And he asked me if the Tulsa massacre was real. Because the first time in his adult life that he learned about Tulsa was through an HBO series where people can shoot lightning out of their hands. Mm. I have a friend of mine that went to a Division I school in the South that we talk about all the time. And his wife told me, just in casual conversation, at least half of the people she graduated with think that the South won the war. Won, W-O-N, won the war. So that's what misinformation can do. These are functional adults.
Also, you're saying it in terms of privilege, but the true privilege is being able to learn the truth about our history. Like, privilege in this realm, it has nothing to do with dollars and cents or what college you went to. It's the ability to learn what truly happened without it being impeded by the scope of whatever political bias is happening. I will say this, it's interesting that this is happening in Florida when they have to import teachers into Florida. I know that because my mother has been traveling to Florida for the past 10 to 12 years, going into these school systems that are ill-equipped to teach the children that are already there. Yeah. So the idea that this is happening in this state is the most alarming because they are so far behind. And I really hope that we're having real honest conversations about it, because, Jeff, I understand the confusion. We're always trying to make sense out of nonsense, though, and this is nonsensical. It's because people aren't paying attention. You aren't paying attention when you're voting in your local elections, and then when things like this come up, everyone's like, are you bananas? Yeah, because you slept on the banana. Like, what is happening here? That's exactly what it is. What is happening here?
I don't know why this isn't like black, white, sexual. Like, this doesn't make sense. This is what the message is. You're not allowed to teach who Rosa Parks is. It doesn't make sense to anybody. Color, race, creed, orientation. Everyone who's normal is like, this is crazy.
Glacier, though. We've had people on here have their poetry books banned. We've had them on the show.
So just so you guys know, very quickly, DeSantis' camp is in panic mode. They just fired 12 people. Expect this to continue, and I hope this law, which is called Stop Woke Act, will be challenged in the Supreme Court, because it's absolutely horrendous, and we're also raising stupid generation.